Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see such a good, large audience, and um, actually, we anticipated a larger than normal audience because I think we all have this question. What happens to our loved one when we can no longer care? I assume that's what the question that we harbor and NAMI, I'm sure is shared by many of you. So what can we do? And often we've had lawyers here who speak about trusts, and we've looked into and we've done special needs trusts, but what about the other side? Who's going to take care of the services that our loved one needs? Who's going to take care of the support that our loved one needs? And unless there's brother, sister, uncle, aunt who's going to step in and do that, we have that big question mark. So we were excited when we heard from Amy Tesler about a new combination, a new consortium, a new combination of services in which a lawyer and a case management firm were collaborating. So we were excited and thought this would be something of interest, and I can see that it is because we're all here. So I want to introduce Stephen Dale, who is an attorney and has come with equipment. And we put a lot in the newsletter, but he will elaborate on his background and what brought him here. And also Christina Grabowski, did I say that? Who works on the case management side. So let's see what this combination looks like, and
Okay,
we will have lots of questions for you.
thank you. Very good. Real quick, here, I am recording this. You are not going to be in the recording unless you step behind me, and I would prefer you not, okay? And assuming the recording comes out okay, here, we'll make sure that it's available to you folks here. We might be, because, you know, we're always talking about sensitive subjects, we'll leave time in the end as much as we can for questions. If you have something really personal, let's leave it for the end, and then we'll turn the camera off here so that we can have a little privacy. I'm going to begin this here, give you a little bit of background, maybe give you a little bit about, you know, my favorite subject, which is myself here and all that. And so now I will tell you, just as we talk about this, we're going to talk about special needs trusts, but what we're going to talk about is why most special needs trusts don't work, okay? And this is for myself. I don't know how many of you know me, but I'm an attorney who does an enormous amount of special needs trusts. I do two things. We have the Dale Law Firm, which is a law firm that does nothing but special needs trusts, nothing but special needs trusts here. And we also, the second part of this is I run a pooled trust. So one correction I would make is that Christine and I are collaborators. She doesn't work for me. I don't work for her. Well, she works for me on a contractual basis, on case by case here. But what I want to talk to you about, and there's two things we're looking for. One is to introduce you to this service here, which is and I'll make one other correction here. It's actually not a new service. How long have you been doing this?
25 years.
Yeah, so it's 25 years new, okay? But what we're going to talk about is a different application of services here. So one is I want to introduce you to this. Hopefully, we've been doing presentations. We had a nice presentation at NAMI Marin and all that. And hopefully you'll see the value of this here. The other part of this is I want to solicit your help, because this is part of a larger project. And what we're trying to do is bring a service that's been around for quite some time and applying it to folks with mental health and behavioral issues here to really put the component into special needs trust where we run into the most problems, okay? So once again, being that I am an attorney, therefore I am full of myself, let's start off with a little introduction to me, and you guys in the back must have incredible eyesight if you can see this, but here. This picture right here is my alma mater. This is Agnew State Hospital, okay? You go, why am I showing you a picture of Agnew State Hospital? I actually come from a family of psychiatric technicians, or what would have been psychiatric technicians. I come from 3 generations, and why did you do that? I come from 3 generations of institutional workers here. So the way this works is, the fella there on your left there, that's my father. He worked in state hospitals for 35 years. He actually worked at Agnew State Hospital, and then he transferred to Patton State Hospital to work with deinstitutionalization, because in 1966, because there was this promise that we're going to shut down the institutions and move everybody to the community, and they're going to have these full scope and well-funded programs that are going to be around forever. I don't know where they are. And there is kind of an odd thing, because I'm kind of a historian of deinstitutionalization here. In the early days of deinstitutionalization, they opened halfway houses, they opened all sorts of residential programs. All the programs that my father put together, there isn't a stick of them left. Anybody believe that could happen? Right. Okay. So that fella there holding the baby, that's my grandfather. He worked at Agnew's for 40 years. He ran the hog farms. By the way, as I talk about Agnew's, I'm not saying that we should bring back the state hospitals. That's not what I'm saying. And in the hospitals, there were good experiences and bad experiences. Even if you thought it was a viable alternative, it just doesn't work in today's world. Okay. Neither does moving people in the community with no programs. That doesn't seem to work either, but that's how it goes. That fellow up there, right up here, that's me. I was a psych tech for 17 years. I worked at Napa State Hospital, Sonoma Developmental Center, Patton State Hospital. Here, I did that for 17 years. Here, I will say I had a mixed bag of experiences, but I had some very bad experiences at Napa State Hospital and did something that's not a good career move. I turned in somebody for abuse, and then I did it a second time. And I'm just here to tell you, it's not a good career move here, but I decided it was time to get out of the state hospital business, and that's how I became an attorney, because I started working at Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund to shut down the institutions that had served my family for 3 generations. Okay, and I actually spent my youth. I have some materials out there. It used to be that staff would bring their children to the units, so I spent a ton of time when I was young on the units. So I mean, I actually have been involved in this sometime. That little fellow right there, he's 45 years old. That's my son. He did not follow the family tradition, so he did not become a psychiatric nurse. But really, you know, part of this is, and this is going to be germane to what we're going to talk about today, okay, which is deinstitutionalization, okay? And I would just tell you, just from my experience, because I work with many folks with all sorts of disabilities, and quite frankly, mental health is kind of my first love, and it's the hardest group we work with here. And, you know, part of what I've really been focused on is really following, for instance, what my father and grandfather were focused on, is how to bring quality care, you know, within the resources you have to folks with disabilities here in a changing environment. Well, we're in kind of the same situation, because once again, the whole thing about this is, how do we provide services? And, you know, the community movement should not just be physically moving folks from state hospitals into the community. Really, the promise of deinstitutionalization was moving folks, no matter what their disability, into the community, having them be part of the community. Okay, and that was the promise. I have to tell you, was that promise kept? From what I can see over the last 60 years that I've been following this, I don't think the promise was met. Okay, so as we get into this, we're going to talk about, well, where are we going, and how can we do something better here as we deal with this here. So what I want to introduce you to is this life passage planning project that we're going to talk about. Now, just getting back to this and giving you just a little bit more background. When I began working as an attorney, and once again, my goal was to be a civil rights attorney, and I still consider myself a civil rights attorney here, but we used to get fairly large settlements for our clients here, and then they would immediately lose their SSI, Medi-Cal, and all of those programs. Now, when I was a young nurse, and definitely when I was a young attorney here, that meant absolutely nothing to me. That's not something they teach in law school or nursing school. I didn't really realize or understand how important these programs are here. But one day, my directing attorney said, we can't keep getting money for our clients and having them lose their benefits. We got to find something to do. He said, I went to this program about these special needs trust things, so that sounds like a real good thing. So why don't you go and learn everything you can and learn about these special needs trusts? Now, I wasn't really excited about the whole thing because I wanted to be a warrior. I definitely didn't want to be a trust attorney here. But as I got into this, what I found was you can do a lot with a special needs trust. And it's not just focusing on keeping somebody eligible on a welfare program, okay? It's not that public benefits aren't important, but if you think about the legacy you want to leave for your loved one, with a mental health issue or a behavioral health issue, it's not, the benefits are a tool, but what we're really looking for is quality of life, the best quality of life possible here for those that we care about. Okay, and so we start doing these special needs trusts, and it was really cool. We're doing them, and they just worked fine until some of my clients started passing away, and they started actually going into administration. Now, here's what I found: almost always, people will name their family members as the trustee of the special needs trust. Okay, now I haven't done it in a while. It's been about 5 years, but I do this program for NAMI California on occasion called Why You Shouldn't Make Your Daughter the Trustee of Your Bipolar Son's Special Needs Trust. It's really not a good idea. Going through just having a family member, forget the disability, having one family member overseeing the money of another family member is a recipe for disaster. Add a mental health issue to it, it's going to be really trying. Okay, now I don't have a ton of time because I would like to save some time for Christine here as we go through this, but I'm just here to tell you, when we work on putting trust together, we do our best to try to have folks use professional trustees with family members really as maybe trust protectors or advisory committee members where they can hire and fire and do some oversight, but not have them involved in the front line. Well, that's all fine and good, and we started working with professional trustees, and we were doing a little bit better, but we weren't quite there, because most of the trustees, they're fiduciaries. They deal with money, they deal with paying for things. Do they really understand the needs of somebody with schizophrenia or somebody with a bipolar disorder? And it's the very rare person who can do that, and they get overwhelmed pretty quickly. So that's not working so good. Then we ran across these folks called care managers, professional care managers. Now, the professional care managers mostly work with seniors, okay? And so, and some of us may be getting a little grayer here. So, with the aging of America, we're seeing more and more of these programs, and we started hiring care managers, and we were doing better because these are professional social workers and registered nurses and the like. And so they were more in tune with a lot of the needs, but the problem with it is the core thing they do is work with seniors and dealing with the issues of somebody with a mental illness and senior issues. They're similar, but not the same. So then we were on a quest that there's got to be something better out there. And so once again, one of the things I do is I'm the trustee of the Golden State Pooled Trust, which is not really going to be our major focus. But what a pooled trust is that, it's a form of a special needs trust. We're a call center here. So what we have to do is we have to work through somebody as far as what our beneficiaries' needs are. And really, we're trying to focus on more than just public benefits. We're trying to focus on quality of life and things like that. On our board, we had a couple of directors of something called the Supported Living Service or an independent living service. Now, I'm going to touch on this, but I'm not the expert. Christine is the expert on this. And we go, boy, that's really getting closer. Okay, just in a nutshell, so I can go through this, so this will make some sense, and then I'll go through my 9 slides as quickly as I can, just to introduce you to the concept, and then we'll have Christine talk a little bit about how, her program and some of the work she's been doing in Alameda County here with this here, and so that you can see the value of this. Once again, something you might want to consider for your loved ones, but even more importantly, as advocates, we're looking for your support because we're looking at spreading this network across the state and across the country. So what is this all about? Okay, we're looking for a quest for a better way to serve beneficiaries of special needs trusts. Okay, the problem that I see, and all we do is manage special needs trusts. That's all we do, both in the law practice and the pooled trust, is the biggest problem that we see is either well-intentioned family members or either professional trustees who really are not in a position, nor do they have the ability to do a lot of hands-on, day-to-day checking in type of thing. And so a lot of the folks in these trusts, they really don't see the trustee that often. And also, as you're going to see as Christine talks, they probably don't understand a lot of the services and programs in the area. So it would be really nice to have a guide. With that, the concept was partnering with existing programs. This is a new adaptation of a program that has been around for 25 years, okay? Because what we were looking at doing is not creating a new program, but to find these existing programs and adapt them to our needs. And what we have found is that it was a pretty easy adaptation. Not that the population we deal with is easy, but a lot of things we needed, they already did. With that, the Life Passage Planning Project, and so we could get this out of the way, I was given 5 minutes to name this thing, and I'm not really good at naming things. I happen to be a sailor. There is a concept called passage planning. Any of you that are nautical folks, you might know what that is, which has to do with this. If you have a ship that's going to go from Oakland to Zanzibar, you can't just send the ship out and say, hey, we'll figure out what we need to do on the way. You got to make sure that ship is equipped. You may need to make sure there's a port to go to, that is fueled. That's what's called passage planning here. It's not a new concept. It's about 450 years old. Okay, so that's what the Life Passage Planning is all about. It's funded by the May and Stanley Smith Trust and the Posey's Foundation. So we were blessed to get a grant to help put this program together here. And the project is overseen by Stetson University College of Law, which is the leading law for special needs trust practitioners. Okay, the idea of it was to adapt and improve existing systems, concepts, and resources in a way that better serves beneficiaries of special needs trust. And I'm hoping that the value of this is going to be really apparent. So part of this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, is that it's to develop an implementation of a system of assessment and the delivery of services. You go back to this. If I am the trustee for your son or daughter, I can't just say, hey, Christine, why don't you go take care of John? Tell me how it's going, and just, if you feel like it, send me a bill. It doesn't work like that. What you have to do is I have to be able to say to Christine, why don't you send one of your staff out, assess what the need is, come back with the assessment. Let's figure out what you think is needed. How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And then we enter into a contract, and then she does her thing here, and then she reports back to us, and then we have this constant process. You have to have some sort of a system in place here where the trustee is able to talk to the care manager, and that's a lot of what they do here, is that they assess and they create and they implement the care when necessary here, and that's what we needed. With it, it will work with participating programs that can easily adapt to the system to deliver services of beneficiaries. So I'm going to share with you the programs we expect to open this year here, and part of this to be able to do this because they have a robust, very active program. If we have something that's completely new and we have to go in and totally retrain their staff, that's just not going to work, and it's also going to take their staff off task. Okay, so so part of that is, I will tell you, when I first started working on this project, my focus was this. The average care manager, and there's some fantastic care managers out here, but there's another problem we run into when we hire care managers is they run somewhere between $150 and $200 an hour. Now you can imagine how quickly you could run through a trust just paying those kind of fees. So originally I was focused on the fee part, but what most of the program, this is the part I probably shouldn't say in front of Christine because she's going to learn the marketplace here and all that. But and there's no set fee, but the current hourly rate is about $60. No, it's not about. It's $60 an hour. And as we go through this, you're going to have some questions. So as we go through this, there's a difference between care management and caregiving, and it doesn't, but it comes at a lower rate. But the thing that has most astounded me has been the higher quality of service that we're getting for that rate too. So we're paying a third of what we were paying before, and the services that we're getting and the things that Christine has been able to provide for our beneficiaries are things that we have never been able to do before. So the other thing is, part of this is that the core work that these programs do are folks with developmental disabilities, regional centers, and that kind of thing, which is a much more robust system. Now, unfortunately, the rates that they pay these folks are ridiculous, right? So the other part of this is to try to get a commercially viable rate to the organization to really help them with their mission, which is to serve persons with disabilities here, and with a real quality. You will find with these programs, they do it out of passion. If they're doing it for money, they're making a big mistake. Okay, but if you're doing it for quality and serving, persons with disabilities, EBI has done a fantastic job. Okay, but the thing about it is, we have to be involved in this for the long run. Here, and we have to make sure that our services are well funded. That's what happened to the mental health programs. They set them up and then they defunded them. And guess what happened? They collapsed. And I got to see that firsthand. So for instance, beneficiaries with a mental health diagnosis currently cannot access the programs, the core programs that EBI does for, how many folks do you serve?
In ILS, 170 to 180, in supported living, 36.
So over 200 folks they're already serving here. Great services as you hear them, which are not available to persons with mental health. This is going to take the system that's been developed under the Lanterman system and make it available to all folks with disabilities, including folks with mental health, behavioral health, physical disabilities, elderly, whatever. If there's a need for care management and delivery of services, EBI already has the experience. Here they do this every day with over 200 folks that they serve. The project will allow all trustees. So this is not a Golden State Pooled Trust project. We intend to use them heavily, but as Christine will talk about, they are available to work with corporate trustees, private professional fiduciaries, other pooled trusts, really, and as we keep going, we'll see how the program can expand. So it's not just available to the Golden State Pooled Trust. I'm hoping over time you're going to get to know more about our trust, and hopefully we earn your trust here as time goes on, but we're not the only ones using this. While the Golden State Pooled Trust is taking the lead on the development of the project here in California, it's a non-proprietary project. Nobody owns it. If somebody owns it, then we're going to find ourselves limiting it. Really, what we're building as we build the network, hopefully, is we're going to have a system of delivery of services where they are done in the same systematic way. but nobody owns it. And I think that's really important. If you're a fiduciary, so once again, we use, especially when we deal with folks with mental health and severe developmental disabilities, we really urge our clients to consider using professional trustees. And so part of it is the trustees that have been using EBI here have now been able to better serve their clients and expand the number of people they serve and provide services they weren't able to provide before. If you're a family member concerned about quality of life for a loved one, what I'm hoping you're going to see is the opportunity to have a better delivery of services for your loved ones. And I hope over time, because we're talking about something where this would be privately paid out of the trust that you folks will set up, but we're actually already working on something where we might be able to get Medicaid dollars to pay for it. But to make that happen, it's going to take, the power and the advocacy of NAMI to understand the importance of this and lay on our legislators and say, we want the same services that folks with developmental disabilities have been getting for years. And it's not to take away from folks with developmental disabilities, but I have to tell you, when I get somebody who calls with a loved one with a severe mental health disability, first thing we ask is there any possibility there's a developmental disability in there somewhere? Why? Because that's where the goodies are, right? And, so last thing, you had a question real quick?
Yeah, I'm assuming the I/DD is intellectual developmental.
So the I/DD is intellectual and developmental disabilities.
What about SLS?
Supported living.
So for the acronyms, and actually there's a rule, we shouldn't use acronyms without telling you what they are. So IDD is intellectual and developmental disabilities, what we used to call mental retardation, but we don't use the R word anymore, okay? So SLS is supported living services, and I won't tell you what it is because otherwise then she won't have anything to do here. And independent living services, or ILS, that's the other service. So we'll leave that to her. Last thing I'm going to cover here, and then have Christine go through this, and then after we're done, I would really like a discussion. Once again, we're hoping not only will you support this and whatever attorney you're working with here, say, hey, I would like you to really consider finding out more about this life passage planning project here, because these are the kind of services I want. But the other thing I'm hoping to get out of this is I'm hoping some of you will see the value of this and help work with us so we can expand this project, not just for Alameda County, but for the state and for the country. The biggest thing that's lacking in the administration of special needs trusts are trained professionals who know the services in the area, who can distance themselves, because let's just go back to this. I was a behavioral nurse. I think I was pretty good at it. I was really good at, at rewarding good behavior and ignoring bad behavior. I really behave in behavioralism. It works really good, except with my own children. It does not, right? It's because the problem is they're too close to me. They know the buttons to push, right? Here. So, it's the same thing with most families. I know there's exceptions to this. Now, here's the process, and then we'll turn it over to Christine here. In order to do this, and one thing I'd like her to go through a little bit is, what is that process? Not to dig into it so much, but just to show you there's a well thought out process that they've been using for 25 years, and we're making some adaptations and applying it to folks with mental health and behavioral issues. So the first part of that, phase one, would be an assessment of the beneficiary's needs. What she's going to show you is how that's done and how we decide what it is we're going to contract for. The next phase of it is incorporation of that into a distribution plan. What the heck is that? A distribution plan is basically that this is the plan, this is what this person needs, this is what we can do for it. And by the way, not all the work would be done by EBI. This is where we could get it here, this is how we could get it there, here's how we could talk to this service, and that kind of thing, and this is what it's going to cost. The trustee, myself and my staff, we look at that. We decide whether or not we like it, or do we need to make some modifications, or can we afford it? After we decide on the plan, then we contract with EBI, and Christine and her staff go out and do the services. The last thing is, are we all done? And you know, when you're dealing with providing for somebody with a disability, your work is never done. It just isn't, okay? Here, so the last phase is a periodic reevaluation. Did it work? You know, do we need to revise it? So really that could be quarterly, it could be annually or whatever, but these things, you can't just let them run on their own. Folks with disabilities are not static objects. It would be easier if they were, but they're not. Things change all the time, and so we have to constantly be reassessing. Here, so we reassess, which would take us through the whole process over again. I know that's a lot to digest here, but you know, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Christine. I do want to tell you, I have been astounded, and EBI and ICS sister group that's in Moran County, for the beneficiaries they've worked with, they've far exceeded my expectations. And part of what they've done is they've been able to help some of our beneficiaries get things that I would never have dreamed we would have been able to do. Christine, the pressure's on here.
Just in
Yes.
making this transition, can you say whether the services have already been delivered to people with serious mental health?
They have been, and in fact, Christine can cover not only that, but maybe some examples.
Okay,
Okay, so this is not theory,
okay.
this is in practice.
But we got a chance to ask some questions later.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We have 45 minutes and 14
We're
seconds.
counting down. Okay.
Although if we don't use all our time, I don't know if you guys would feel bad about that. But, she's going to run us out of here in 45 minutes and 4 seconds.
Okay.
So anyway, there we go. Well, my wife will call it about 50 minutes. So.
So I will quickly just sort of run through who we are and get on to the important stuff. What is it we do? EBI, we've been around, as Steve said, for 25 years. I will speak up. I will take that as a sign. Okay. We are vendorized by the Regional Center of the East Bay. That means we have all the insurance and the liability, and we provide a service to people with developmental disabilities. There's a wide range of disabilities.
You know, this is for, what's a regional center?
Regional Center of the East Bay is sort of the department hub where we get funding from, where people with disabilities, where they get support services. They also give services, just not ILS, but employment services. There's day programs, work programs. So they decide with the person with the disability what it is that they're looking for, and then they bring that out to different vendors. We are one of many vendors in Alameda County and in Contra Costa County.
Strictly IDD.
Yes, our agency provides services in Alameda County, and we do have some people in Contra Costa County. That's usually because they've acquired a housing voucher or an apartment, affordable housing, and or a job, and we've moved out there with them. Like I said, we've been around for 25 years. We are a nonprofit. Currently, we have 250 within our living services program and about 200 people in our employment service program. So move on. Uh-huh.
Do you have to be a road regional center like to use your service?
No, this is where we sort of are starting to work with Steve now. And like he said, we've learned that the services that we provide roll over into this other field that he's creating. So the people that we're serving now through Steve and through other private fiduciaries, they do not qualify for regional center supports. So we're offering those services we've been doing for 25 years to people now whose fiduciary says maybe someone needs housing or they need support with benefits management. We then come in and we help provide those services.
Excuse me, so for 25 years you've been serving people with mental illness?
No,
No, so
developmental
developmental
disability.
disabilities, but a lot of them are
Right.
dual diagnosed. But the first
Well,
tier
yeah.
diagnosis has to be a developmental disability. If mental health is almost everyone's second tier, but if your first tier is mental health, it automatically eliminates you from regional center services.
Right, right. So that's what you're doing now, but then there's some kind of transition.
Well, that's
Well,
what this is
that's
all
what this is
about.
about right
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So he's working with current agencies that already exist, because we were sort of a lot of us were already in place. We were already giving and doing these services for other people.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
We should give her 15 minutes because I know what your questions are going to be, and we want to answer the questions here, but we just need to make sure you have a threshold here.
So let's move on then to person-centered approach. So sort of let's go back one. So we're looking at building a long-term relationship with people. We're just not going to come in there and make our judgment in an hour and send a report over. So when Steve or any fiduciary calls us and asks us to come in, we do ask for some hours for an assessment period. That buys us time to get to know the person and what it is they're looking for. We already know what the family has written down in paper, what the fiduciaries are looking for, but usually the person who we're meeting with, they have totally different goals, different aspirations, different wants and different needs. So we try to figure out how to bridge that together to create an assessment plan that we submit to the fiduciary. I should also say that agencies like ours, we have no control over the money. I don't make a decision about the money. If they want something, I don't mind advocating for it and sending an email off to them and letting them know that this person would like a new sofa or a new bed to go on vacation. But I do not authorize or give the final okay. It comes from the fiduciary, the people who are in charge of the special needs trust. They are the ones who make that decision. So we've had experience for the last 25 years, I said, but what we find that our services provide is we provide benefits management. We help people apply for and maintain SSI, SSDI, their Medi-Cal, their Medicare, or if they want to go into a Medigap plan or roll that over into a Kaiser plan, we help in those areas. We help find doctors. If they require a specialist, we can help navigate that system for them. If they need IHSS services, as time goes on, they need more in-home support services, we can help in that area. We also consider ourselves, independent living is considered a teaching program. So we also want to come in and assess, can someone learn to manage their own money, submitting receipts, creating a budget for the month. We will help create a plan that works for them and is geared towards them. Not one box fits for everybody. Some people like everything online. We still have a lot of people who like stuff on paper and don't even access the computer. So we figure out how to make it work for them. Budgeting, grocery shopping, meal planning. If they have meal planning, that's within dietary needs, nutrition needs. We can help them navigate and learn how to shop and meal prep for those specific health needs. We send detailed case notes to the fiduciaries on the supports that we have given. We also do social activities. If they want to do a social, if they want to go somewhere, they like to go shopping might be their thing, or if they want to go recently, not within this program, but someone's planning a vacation. So we help them and another person plan a cruise, and they're leaving this Saturday. Now they've been saving money for about 2 years to do this, to go on a group cruise. So we can help at social events if that's what they want to do, social outings, learn their community. I would say one of the areas that we are really strong in is housing. So we advocate and look for affordable housing. Can we wait till the end?
I'm not clear who we
EBI, East Bay Innovations. Yeah, when I say we, I mean EBI. It's just not me. We're a team of people there. So when we're looking for housing, it's sort of like all hands on deck, and everyone who hears about a housing, we're working together to make sure that we access that housing, because we're not the only agency out there that's looking for housing for people. So we want to make sure that everyone knows who needs housing. Today, we want to talk about little stories. Today, a man who's been homeless for 14 years, he was referred to us by a fiduciary. He signed on a lease and is moving into an apartment for the first time in 14 years. He's been homeless. So that's where I spent my afternoon. He got his keys. He has a warm place to sleep. He won't be sleeping in his car anymore. And he has a small trust, but it just wasn't enough. And I guess this was a decision he made, that he would rather have the trust be there for emergencies. And he decided he didn't want to live in a boarding care. And that is his choice. But today we were able to secure him housing. And I just wasn't the only person. It was 4 of us. I put his name out there, sort of the requirements, and it was 4 of us within about 2 months. It was literally by luck this apartment fell into our lap. But because we were all working together, we were able to get him housed. We will do follow-up with him and do check-ins with him probably once a week, and then over time we will phase ourselves out to just once a month. Because this is the first time he's had a home for 14 years. So one of the things I've written is, in the assessment is that he has ongoing case management, because we want to make sure that this lasts. We don't want him to lose it just because we just moved him in and said goodbye, see ya, good luck. We want to be there if needed. So we're looking at least probably 3 months. We will be there every week, and we will phase out to just once a month to maintain that housing. And we're going to help maintain his benefits so we can keep that housing, because it is affordable housing, and there are lots of rules around affordable housing. So,
But just the fact that she knew how and who to talk to is enormous.
So this is new for us, working with fiduciaries and people with special needs trusts, and we're learning as we go along too. It's been a growing experience for the past year to figure out how to fit it into our program, but we have decided it does fit best in our independent living program. That's because a lot of the people work with independent living, we're doing some of the same skills. That's why we have rolled it into that program. Supported living, the other program that is on there listed as SLS, that is a program for people with more high needs that require up to 24/7 one-on-one support. That means they cannot respond to their imminent emergency needs. So they would need a live-in with them at all times. They would need someone with them at all times in the community. We don't find this to be necessary within the program, working with the fiduciaries that we've been referred to and working with Steve through the trust. So this is more independent living. We see it the same way. We come in, we might have high hours in the beginning if we're trying to straighten out benefits, or we're looking for housing, looking for a medical doctor, but then we would slowly back out. Again, we don't want to utilize that money just for showing up and going for walks every week. We want to make sure we're working on specific goals that will help this person extend the life of their trust. That is our goal. So if we can, we will phase out. Have there been emergencies? We did experience it. This was a learning experience for us. Someone's trust, when we were brought in, they were at the end of their trust. And it was hard to know that in 3 months, we would not be able to provide services. We were able to find them housing within their budget at a boarding care. That person made the decision after the family signed the lease not to go. And at that time, the fiduciary had to tell us we can no longer provide the services because there was no money left in the trust. This has been a learning curve for us, and I'm sure for the other agencies, because when you're getting funded through the regional center, you sort of have a monthly contract, the money just comes in when you send in the bill. We knew that this was coming to an end, and it was still hard for us to figure out how do we maintain to make sure that this person is okay. But honestly, we can't put the manpower and my time or staff's time just seeing if this person is showing up to this new boarding care that we found. So it is something to think about, and it's something that we think about and we're very thoughtful about. We don't know how much is in people's trust. The only thing we ask is if the trust is low or coming to an end, that we are made aware, because we need to know what our time frame is if we are looking for housing or we're trying to get their benefits back. Right now, we're trying to help someone who lost their SSDI. We're trying to help them get that back. They've appealed it multiple times and they've been unsuccessful, so they've asked us to come in and try to help. So we are trying, because he lived in a boarding care, and the boarding care actually does not maintain benefits. It's just basically a room and board. It's a roof over your head, a place to cook your meals. That is it. But they don't help him with benefits or medical appointments. That was also a learning curve for us. Coming from a regional center vendor, a lot of these things are sort of already in place because their families are still really active. And we want families to be active, but we do ask, to give us a little bit of space while we're getting to know your loved ones, again, to navigate what it is they want out of the program. We have 33 minutes left, and I'm going to sort of whip through this a little bit. So I think we've talked about some of these things already. Maximizing funds, their benefits. We don't want to become someone's care provider. We are not their caretaker. We can help manage and help them hire an IHSS worker, but we are not going to charge their funds to come in every day and help them with their personal care or do their housekeeping. We want to access their benefits to the fullest, which for most people on Medi-Cal, that would be in-home support services. Accessing healthcare, we talked about. Teaching to budget and money management. What we've learned is saving receipts with special needs trust is huge. It's probably more important than any lesson that I've learned is the receipts. often I get emails about the receipts that I have to still submit. Shelley just emailed me about a receipt that I have to submit. So it is something that they track diligently. And so we are learning the importance of people with special needs trust on saving those receipts and submitting them to their fiduciary for record keeping. And I'm sure you'll have questions about that. Steve can answer those
Well,
questions.
part of just a quick thing, Social Security, especially for anybody on SSI and to a degree on Medi-Cal, Social Security intends to review every expenditure from every trust. And sometimes just the receipts alone here trying to maintain that is difficult. And if you have somebody with a severe psychiatric disability, is keeping receipts a skill that they're good at? Generally not. Part of it, just to mention this is part of the whole ILS concept, is part of that is Christine and her crew can come in and teach them and work with them on how to do the receipts. And ideally, in most ILS services, the job is to work yourself out of a job eventually.
Yeah, and sometimes we collect the receipts. So with a few people, we collect the receipts and we submit the receipts on their behalf. But we try to teach them like tools to use of where to save the receipts, not to throw them away, or to even ask for a receipt these days.
They're not the ones expending the trust, the special needs trust.
Well,
But here's
so
the
they
thing
can
that
if they've asked
happens.
money.
I'm the fiduciary. I may be paying for things, and we also oftentimes will give them access to TrueLink cards, Enable cards, and things like that because we want them to have some autonomy. But the problem is if they make an expenditure at Target, what did they buy?
Food.
And they want to know, was it food and shelter? What was it? And this has always been a problem because, the objective is not, it goes back to deinstitutionalization. We really, to the degree possible, we want our beneficiaries to be as independent as possible, not to necessarily be dependent on the trustee, but able to do that, they need to learn skills. So part of what Christine is saying is if they are able to learn the skills, what they'll do is they'll go in and teach them and monitor it and then back off. Now, some of these folks are never going to be able to do it, and then it may be ongoing services. So it's very person-centered. But that's one of many examples of things that they provide that, quite frankly, we have just never had access before at a price that we can afford.
One of the things we didn't talk about on here is training. Assisting or hiring and training for in-home workers. We will help the person hire, but at the end of the day, it's still that person's decision. And if they're conserved, then it's the family, whoever is the conserved, they would come in and help make that decision. But we don't make the decision. We can help them interview, come up with interview tools. We definitely give our opinion and might, write up something what we thought, but it is the person's decision. That's even with people that we support in ILS. We say the same thing. Because we are person-centered, we want to make sure that they still are having some control over it. But we do help them navigate the provider list and how to hire, and then write up a training, like what it is that they want their worker to do for them. So we write that up for them. But we do that with them. And if they're conserved, we would take into consideration the family members read and let their input be part of the training. So what is the process of engaging beneficiary special needs? So right here, this is the initial intake form. It's just a few questions. It's information about the person being referred to the agency. We do, if the fiduciary knows, like if they have benefits, what their Medi-Cal, SSI have, knowing all of those bits and pieces is helpful to knowing sort of like the person's background. If they have Medi-Cal or if they're a senior and now they are on Medicare, do they still qualify for Medi-Cal? In some instances, yes, they would still qualify. So to make sure that benefit stays in place if it hasn't, then we would know to go, and that's an area to work on. Are they paying more than 50%, 70% of their benefit income towards housing? Well, to us, that's a sign that they need affordable housing. And if we're able to find them affordable housing, if they're happy where they're at, and if they're living in a room and board situation or a board and care or a group home, and they're happy, then that's fine. We have someone in a group home, she loves it. We just go in once a month. We help with a few tasks, like she likes to go shopping by herself. She likes to go looking for music. It's her favorite thing. And we help with dental appointments. Denti-Cal is not the best dental service through Medi-Cal. It's a Denti-Cal insurance. So this trust was set up and her dental services She just pays whatever the dentist rate is, but she gets dental work done every 3 months, and it's covered through the trust. So we help with that appointment. We take her there. We make sure that the bill gets sent off to the trust and it gets paid. And if she has any follow-up work, we help with that too. And we also help with her podiatry needs.
And I just mentioned, in a case like that, dental care is huge. It's one thing sending off the beneficiary off to the dentist and coming back and getting a long list. Well, did they really participate in the treatment process? You know, once again, by having somebody from EBI actually go out there, we have somebody who can ask questions, report back to the need, you know, make sure that what we're expending makes sense. It makes a huge difference. And this would depend on the individual.
So dentists, unfortunately, it's easier to pull teeth. It's cheaper for them just to pull out the tooth than it is to save the tooth, or for them to go through problems. A lot of people dentists don't like to work with people that have behavioral needs. They don't want to give them a sedative. So it's really hard to find the right dentist, but they are out there. Unfortunately, maybe that dentist doesn't take Denti-Cal. So if they have a trust, and we have people in ILS who their family would rather pay to save their teeth, because we all want our teeth. We don't want to be walking around with missing teeth. So that is one of the biggest things, just like in ILS that we're learning here, is that dental is needed. We have multiple people whose trusts cover their dental needs. And we help with all those appointments. And because they're scheduled around a time that they can go, not scheduled around a group home when everyone in the group home is going at the same time. We schedule it and we go and pick up and take her to the appointment. We share the information with the group home and the fiduciary so they are aware of what's going on. If we've done training on how to use that water pick that the dentist recommended. So again, it's also about teaching. But the assessment, it's very basic. It's just a highlight of who the person is. That just gives us a snapshot before we walk into the home, because a lot of people won't know all their benefit questions. Like if I ask someone if they have SSI or SSDA, they'll say yes. They probably only have one, but they'll say yes. So then if I see this on paper, it helps me sort of navigate that and sort of weed it out ahead of time. Because I don't want to ask that question and stress someone out if I don't have to ask it. So I'd rather have some of that background on paper. The assessment part's going to be more personal about their likes, their dislikes, their housing. What do they see as their hopes and dreams? We all have a vision of what we want our life to look like and the path that wants to go down. Well, even someone with a disability, they have those same dreams. They want to be included. They want to be a part of their community. They might not know how to navigate to get there, but they do have them. And so we sort of take all that and put it on paper in writing to create an assessment plan of what it could look like for them if they were to work with us.
Christina,
This is
looking at the time, we have about 25 minutes.
Yes.
I know there's going to be a lot.
Okay, so
We're getting close to
we're getting close
questions.
in. We can bypass this. This is a backgrounding check. That's it for someone housing. We do ask for a release of information to communicate openly and freely with a fiduciary or a family member. So this just talks more about the life planning. We can kind of sip through here. These are all the agencies working within the program for the life passage planning program. All right,
And
so
I might mention, just as we're, although if you have a close there, but two things we're looking for. One is to help us with the program in Alameda County. But the larger thing we're looking for, just as an advocate for NAMI, is to be able to take services that have only been available to folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, make them available to folks in the community through special needs trust and maybe beyond, who knows. And part of this is, as we do this here, trying to talk with our other NAMI folks. By the way, I'm a member of NAMI Contra Costa, so to work with our other chapters in our other regions. And what we're looking at, these are the programs that we expect within the year will be up and running. So once again, this is in your area. Last thing before we open it up for questions here is that we will send something out, and if it's okay, if they'll send out to the membership, assuming the video came out okay, that's terrific. There's a lot more to cover. I will tell you, one of the things we've been doing, because we've been talking to family members and we're going to do some focus groups, is a lot of folks are saying, hey, this is really cool. This is great for when I pass away and the money goes in the trust. The question we are starting to get from families is it possible to start working on these things before I pass away? And let me give you an example, just from doing this for years. You are, no doubt, your loved one's advocate, or you wouldn't be here on a Wednesday evening here listening to a damned attorney. Okay, so the thing about it is, the big thing is who's going to be that advocate when you're around. So you could do letters of intent, you could do the trust and all of that. But here's the problem. And it's not just if you pass away. It's like if you have a stroke or some other debilitating situation and you're not able to be that advocate. It's kind of nice, like, what if you had a plan together beforehand? And what if, for instance, your loved one actually met the folks that are going to go out and meet them before you pass away? Because here's the problem you run into, and just as an attorney who does this work, we set this trust up here, and let's say you have a stroke. So the trust goes into administration, and we send the care manager or the trustee out, and so they're saying, oh, it's really so sad your mom had a stroke. I know you don't know who I am, but I'm here to help you out. I mean, you are introducing these folks at the very worst time possible, and it's really hard to make that transition. What we're hearing from families, for instance, here is it possible to start really the process and maybe introduce and do the plan before you pass away or before you have that stroke? And once again, the input we get from you folks, which means I need to be quiet and listen to you, is really valuable to us as we take this service that's been available for 25 years, but never available to this population, bring it to the population, once again, right now at a price. And with a little work and a little advocacy, maybe we can get our legislators to come up with ways to pay for this, because the promise of shutting down the institutions was, let us shut down the institutions, save all this money, and we will pour all that money into the community. That's what they did for folks with IDD, but they defunded the programs for mental health. It's time to go back 50 years back to where the promise was and go back to, you can't just move them into the community. A lot of them need care management. And with that, we have 20 minutes and 8 seconds for questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your introduction the question of how much do you need to put in the special needs trust. And so I'm asking myself, what happens to our son when the special needs trust is all used up?
Here's the real world.
I have one other
Okay.
question.
Yes.
The other thing is, the point you were just making about doing some of this before you're no longer here. Our special needs trust, thanks to Jennifer, is set up to be funded at the second death. So, what would happen if it needs to kick in before?
Jennifer's my associate, so since I know that trust, I know your trust, even though I've probably never seen it. Your trust actually probably has a clause in it that says if you and your wife become incapacitated, it actually could be used then. Going back to our first question, I actually wrote a paper, I almost brought it, and I'll send it if you like, called How Much Should I Put in My Child Special Needs Trust? And the answer is, how in the hell could I possibly tell you? I mean, and it's not to be totally cavalier about the whole thing, but there are so many factors, especially depending on the age of your child here, because right now, if you look at the difference between developmental disabilities and mental health, in developmental disabilities, we have a system called the Lanterman system where your child is entitled to services. Now they're having problems because the rates are too low, but that's a whole other thing. But they are entitled to services. There's not supposed to be waiting lists. On mental health, it's real easy because there are no services, right? And so now, today, and originally everything was mental health. It went from one end to the other. Now, hopefully it doesn't go back the other direction, because it's not that we have ill will for other disability groups here. Hopefully we can see services go up. So we go back to, how much do you need for your child? Tell me how long they're going to live. Tell me if our system is going to stay the way it is, or are we going to have an increase in services here and all of that. and I probably could tell you how much. To try to come up with that is absurd. But let's go to the other part of this, and you got to be realistic. When the trust runs out of money, services end. It's kind of like a lot of things with nonprofits. No money, no mission, right? There's a lot you could do with volunteers and that kind of thing, but that just doesn't work with trust. So here's the thing, being responsible about this. And, as far as a number, it's whatever you can do. I know that's there are calculators on websites, which I think are absolutely absurd, that will give you a number, and it'll be a very high number. Well, here's the thing that comes up. Maybe the right number is a very high number, but maybe you don't have that kind of money. So we have to work with what you have. So part of this, we go back to this process here, looking at this. Now, EBI is used to doing things in a way of being real cognizant of cost and not being wasteful. But part of what we have to do when we deal with the assessment and the distribution plan is maybe they come up that what John really needs are $10,000 a year in services, and let's say we have a 25-year-old. Well, that person's probably going to live for another 50 years. If it's $10,000 a year and there's $100,000 in that trust, what are we going to do about the other 40 years? And I'll tell you, the thing that gets really difficult is that it may be that everything that's on that plan is valid, but, depending on the situation, we probably have to stretch it out. So we may find ourselves going, housing is always number one, always number one. So it may be that we got to focus on the housing, and maybe we can work on vocational. In fact, she's working on a case right now where we know we're going to run out of money, and call him Mr. F here. By the way, he was another one that was homeless and was just bouncing from place to place to place. What were you able to do for him?
We secured him a below market rate unit at 30% of his income. So they just looked at his SSI, and so now he'll pay at $236 a month for rent.
By the way, in a program where there are 10 and 20-year waiting lists, I don't actually. Maybe we don't want to hear how she did it here, but she did it. But see, we go back to this. In that case, we know we're going to run out of money. So our objective, and that we've been working with her on, is Mr. F, you're going to run out of money. We need to get you in an affordable house, and you need to start thinking about vocational training because we are going to run out of money, right? So there's no easy answer, but you have to work with what you have. I mean, that's what you have to do. Let's take this lady's question, and then yes.
All right, on the previous screen that you had the different groups listed and things, were those all nonprofits?
They're all nonprofits. Yes. So the different programs, the one that's up and running today is Integrated Community Services, a very unique program that's been working cross-disability for years, but that's a nonprofit. Even with that, they do charge for the services.
Right. So I'm wondering, this year, what's the hourly wage for a nonprofit? And then secondly, what's the hourly wage for your services? So we get an idea of how much things cost.
So if we were looking at this, and there's different ways of doing this, okay? As a trustee, I'm the trustee of the Golden State Pool Trust, and we charge 1.5% of the money under management, or $1,500 a year, which is ever greater, okay? Private fiduciaries charge hourly. They can range anything from $85 to $150 an hour. Here, corporate trustees will tend to charge 1 to 1.5%, but most corporate trustees, let's see, Fremont Bank, I think, has a minimum of $250,000. Wells Fargo here, which has a very good special needs division. It's hard to be an adult and not have a problem with Wells Fargo, but their trustee group is very good here. But their minimum is $1 million, so there's probably a lot of folks who just don't happen to have $1 million that can live for their child. Other pool trusts charge different amounts, so it really does vary here. So it really depends.
So it's an hourly thing no matter how much?
We charge a percentage. Private fiduciaries charge hourly. Here's what you'd want to do, working it all out, is you have to kind of put the two things together.
And so you do the annual report for SSI or whatever they
We,
require?
we make sure that all the distributions are done in a way that they can be reviewed by SSI. We get about 3 reviews a week from SSI, and we make sure that everything is in order. So when they go through the review, our Social Security system is so screwed up, nobody can guarantee you that we won't have a problem with benefits, but we have very few problems. Social Security is very difficult to work with. Just being fair, I know we have some folks over here. You, ma'am?
We are working on the living trust now,
Yes.
and Tony also mentioned special needs trust for one of our loved ones. So we're in the process now. Now, how do I incorporate your ideas into our special needs living trust? How does this work? I'm a little bit confused.
That's a very good question. So she's in the process of planning for a special needs trust. Okay. Now, with the special needs trust, a lot of what's happening, what we're doing, you don't necessarily have to have special language. But for instance, if your attorney wants to contact us, we will do trainings for them, because what we like to do is put something in the trust. You know, first would be who's going to be the trustee. My prejudice is to not necessarily have family members as the primary trustees. It doesn't mean you can't. I'm just telling you, I don't see it work very often. So it might be that you would have language that would say, like we use Herb Thomas, and she works with Herb. It might say in the language that Herb Thomas would be the trustee. We might call, if you have family members, call them trust protectors here, who could hire and fire trustees. So if for some reason it's not working with Herb, they would have the ability to hire and fire the trustee. But we also are putting language in trust that says what we really want is a plan. And what we would like to have the plan done, we'd like the plan either developed by a care manager or by an agency like Christine's, because see, without a plan and without a budget, you're just flying by the seat of your pants here. And so part of what I'm really focused on, and I think what is really needed in the special needs trust industry as much as possible, is to have good support services and trustees who can actually deal with folks with mental health issues. And I will tell you, this won't surprise you, the mental health beneficiary is the toughest beneficiary to deal with. Because of my interest in mental health, I do a lot of programs, and I know for my staff, they probably prefer that we only do things for folks with autism here, because this is a difficult population, but it's the most necessary population to work with, and that's where we go through. So here's the thing. I would be more than happy that if you take my card and say, you heard this thing, and I'm not trying to steal a client, that I would be happy to talk to your attorney and maybe have them attend some classes on the value of not just, there's a thing I call the magic document syndrome, which is, in order to take care of my child, I must have a special needs trust. A document is not going to protect your child. That's absurd. A document is going to set a system of management and advocacy and set up a relationship, like a trustee working with a care manager or a care management agency who's able to assess and deliver those needs, and maybe work with a family member who would be what we would call the trust protector to make sure that we're moving along with what your intention is. That's how it should be done, and that's how you get the best results.
I'm sorry, quick question.
Real quick.
Any lawyer do the special needs living trust, or their lawyer needs some training?
I'm an attorney who does a lot of this and specializes in. Almost any attorney that does estate planning has the ability to do special needs trust. Do they really understand what works and what doesn't? If you're not involved in the administration of the trust, you're just producing a document. A document will not protect your child. You need a system of advocacy. I know there was a question in the back.
Yeah, I had a question for Christine.
Yes.
What training does your staff get in dealing with serious
Excellent question.
illness, and have they had experience dealing with people that are psychotic, and do you have a mental health professional that can come and have case conferences?
Great question. So that's a good question.
So can't speak for the other agencies. Our agency, we do have an MSW for the staff that we can send out. We also have an RN that works for us that we could send out. Their rate, we do charge a higher rate for those services. And then the training our staff go through, a lot of our staff come from actually, they're in between college, like they're in between their bachelor's and they're going for their graduate degree. So they are people with degrees in psychology moving on into the field of social service.
And a lot of times they know nothing, they learn nothing.
They
about
don't, but we
science.
still send them to trainings. We participate, everyone has to go through mental health aid first training. We have other people that come in and do training. We have a behaviorist that's on staff for us that comes in and also does assessments and trains staff on how to work with certain people if they have a habit maybe that socially is not acceptable. So our behaviorists will come out with us and the staff to figure out a way, because sometimes it's how we're approaching it, not necessarily the person with the habit. We prefer to use the word habit just for language when we're out and about in the community, again, because it doesn't draw so much attention to the person that we're with if we say the word habit.
The other thing,
And then then for like benefits training, we have someone on staff who is SSA certified. We go to them with questions, or we go to trainings. I've been to trainings. I'm not certified, but I've been to trainings, but I do use the person who's certified. I have brought her a long list recently. So we're different, like, again, because we're sort of a big agency, we sort of use each other where our specialty is.
And what about training in alcohol and other drugs, because a large percentage of mentally ill people use.
Yeah, substance abuse. We go through trainings like we're now at the tail end of with Alameda County's substance abuse training. We've been going like every Thursday to these trainings on different opioids. We're focusing more on those recently, but we have had alcohol and that was the other common one. But right now we're really focused on opioid training and Narcan. Yes, and we do work with the homeless population, and that is a different skill set. So not everyone might work with that person if I don't feel like they have the skill set. But recently, we have a lot of people. We hired someone recently. She works with the Homeless Coalition in Richmond. So we look for people when we're hiring that that have that skill set, because she's going to be a great resource for us because she has this background and this is what she does as her other job.
and I'll mention this real quick so we can take a couple more questions. There are some limitations because, for instance, once again, I used to work with folks with severe behavioral issues, and we don't send folks out if there's a serious safety issue involved with that sort of thing. So, I mean, there are some limitations, and if you were looking at working with them, that's something we have to take a look at. So we
That's part of the assessment period, and it would be deemed. I mean, there was someone we first met about a year ago out of John George. We were not going to drive that person anywhere. We would not be in a vehicle, and that's mainly what the person wanted. So we had to say until they were stable and willing to work with us on their own side of medical, we would not be able to work with them on what they wanted. So I think
What is the difference? There's a new program in the state of California. A lot of us don't have this kind of resources. We're not going to be able to use this kind of assets for a lot of us. Who needs help as we go? There's something called CalAble.
I will send some information about CalAble, and we've been using CalAble quite a bit. It would take about 15 minutes to do justice. If it's okay, when I send the link to the video, I'll send a link to about CalAble. There's some things that are very valuable about it. There's some things that are very problematic about it. And by the way, on April 16th, the Golden State Pool Trust, we do a lot of webinars. Dante Allen, who's the executive director of CalAble, will be in my studio. I actually have a video studio here to talk about it. We'll send that out. By the way, we would have room for 1 or 2 representatives of NAMI if you want to actually show up. I'm going to dodge that because that's more than we can handle. You had a question in the back?
What you can do is send us the link, we'll put it on our website and then on Instagram.
Okay. And CalAble is a good thing to go through, ma'am. And then we'll take you in the back. If you have it, well, do you need one? A special needs trust does 2 things that a living trust doesn't, okay? A special needs trust is a form of a spendthrift trust, so you can hold the funds in it without interfering with SSI, Medi-Cal, IHSS, HUD, that kind of thing. The other thing is it's a form of a spendthrift trust. So it's a trust where the trustee has absolute discretion and the beneficiary has none. Now, there's good and bad things about that, but it's also a way to handle those assets to protect them from creditors or other problems. I actually have a video, and I'll send you on this. You'll see that I'm video happy. We have a video on planning for people with mental health issues, and a lot of it talks about trying to find that balance. So a special needs trust should be more than just preserving the SSI and Medi-Cal, because there's a whole lot more issues than that. And here's the other thing with mental health that's a little different than most folks with IDD. Not that we don't have variations. A lot of folks with mental health issues, especially if you're dealing with somebody with a bipolar disorder, they'll have periods of time when they're doing really well, and they'll have times when they're not, right? It's like there's two Bobs, right? And so we always want the functional Bob, but that other Bob is always around here. And so one of the skills in this, and this is where, once again, having somebody who can actually meet the beneficiary where they live, not over the phone, where they live. And that has been incredibly valuable to me. It helps us assess when we have somebody where they're starting to maybe go through their cycle again, so we can start tightening things up. Because the assets that you're leaving are very precious assets. I know the lady in the back had a question.
Could we agree to go another 10 minutes, because I think there are going to be a lot of questions.
If that's okay with you. And if you walk out, I'm not insulted. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify some of the services that you provide and Christine provides, you both feel as an attorney with drawing up special needs trust, and you also, are you the fiduciary on the pool trust? And for Christine, I just wanted to see what vocational services you provide and whether they're independent of the Department of Rehab.
I'm kind of an unusual guy, so I'm actually two people. I am either the attorney here, so we have some clients in the room. So we either are the attorney or the trustee. We don't do both. Okay, it's either one or the other. It's a conflict. As an attorney, Jennifer and my drafting staff, what we do is we draft trusts, we form relationships with services that are necessary for our clients, so with fiduciaries, care managers. This is a new program we're working on and that kind of thing, because the document itself isn't going to do it. As a fiduciary for a pool trust, we have 250 beneficiaries. We're kind of a call center. So what we do is we handle the funds, we make sure they're invested, we handle the distribution. So we use TrueLink cards, we use Able accounts, we use whatever we need to get them the things they need. But somebody has to tell us what they need so we can, make those purchases and make sure that they're correct. The fiduciary themselves, because the vast majority of my beneficiaries, I will never meet them in person. Okay? That leads into what Christine does.
Your question was about vocational
You
services.
said you provide some vocational services. I wonder what those were.
So we have, we do take people to work with Department of Rehab. That is one of the agencies we do work with. And we just sort of help them manage and navigate that system. The other side that we work really close with, that's more hand over hand, that's through the regional center, and that is funding for employment services.
So
And that's a project.
about regional
Yeah.
center.
So that's a little different, because that wouldn't fall under, but do we help people with Department of Rehab? Yes, we have. We also have a ticket to work program, a person who works in-house for us, and we work with the ticket to work program.
Christine, can you say how many people with serious mental illness that you actually have?
Probably about a third, because a lot of our
Give
dual,
us a number.
probably a third out of, I only know from an independent living and an SLS point, so I would say a third of that, probably about 50 people. that have
And then as
diagnosis
far as
of,
the-
like bipolar or manic depressive, schizophrenia.
And then as far as the special needs trust beneficiaries, what percentage do you think? Almost all the beneficiaries she's dealing with have a serious mental or behavioral issue.
Yeah, all of them.
You way in the back?
What is the range of
There's no set fee. I can tell you our fee runs about $2,500. I think they probably range from $1,500 to, I've seen people spend $5,000 or $6,000. Let me just give you this advice, and it's not this, obviously if you want to work with this, that's what we do, but that's not the point here. Any attorney with a software program, and they all use software programs, okay, have the ability to create the trust. When you're interviewing the attorney, what you should be doing is you should be buying their experience. And I'm not the only attorney who does special needs trust, and I'm not the only attorney law office that works with people with mental health. But part of what you would want to do an interview them for here, because you're not just buying a document, is what experience do you have working with families with mental illness? And the other thing is, and this is the part that's really important, when I first started doing this work, I probably went 5 years before anybody passed away. Did I have any idea whether this thing would work or not? I had no idea. I mean, I started in the early days, and when people started passing away, I started learning the importance of trustees. I started learning the importance of care managers and that sort of thing. I think the experience that an attorney gets from assisting in the administration of the trust, whether they're a fiduciary or they're just doing it as counseling the trustee, is enormously important, because what you really should do when you're working with the attorney is, of course, the cost is important here, but the other part of that is you're buying the experience of the law firm, and they should be able to, share their experiences. What works, what doesn't work, and that sort of thing. Because we go back to what I call the magic document syndrome. I think it's become something where it's like, I'm going to get a special needs trust done, and because I have this trust done, everything's going to be okay. That's absolutely absurd. Okay? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
This is one of not only my concern, and many people I know has this concern. When our loved one is sick,
yes,
and should be going into the hospital for inpatient care, and the consumer, they don't know they're getting sick. So end up they cancel their apartment and end up on the street, become homeless. I know somebody end up like that. Do you provide any kind of service for that area? Yes.
We do, but there are extreme limitations. Okay, and I mean, just being realistic, because the problem with it, and I have mixed emotions as a civil rights attorney. Yes, we've gone from state hospitals where there was no control over their life to now they're in the community where they have total control over their life. Is that an entirely good thing? I don't think it is. Okay, after watching this, and the problem always is that balance between civil rights and, trying to protect them. Now, the problem that you run into, and I think everybody in this room knows this, it's virtually impossible to make somebody do something they don't want to do until they get so severely disabled that they are truly a danger to themselves here, or gravely disabled in the most extreme sense. And to tell you the truth, I think our system is absurd. I think it's time for a new system. Do I have a magic answer to get around that? Absolutely not. And if I told you so, it would be a lie. Now, here is one thing that makes a difference. And I think a lot of this is when you have an impartial person who is there to see them on a regular basis. I'm not saying it's going to eliminate the chance of this happening, but it will lessen this. One of the values of Christine and her staff going out and visiting somebody on a regular basis is because sometimes we just want a safety check or a check on how they're doing. By having somebody who is neutral, who's there with them on a regular basis, we might be able to identify problems before it happens, before they go off that cliff. I do not have the most devastating calls that I get, and I get a lot of them, is my child just had an extremely psychotic break. They went to the psych hospital. They stayed just long enough to get discharged. Oh my God, what can I do? There must be something around this. And, the hardest thing is in these cases, and we all know that, in a lot of cases, there's not much we could do. This is why NAMI is so important, because we have to find that balance between civil rights, but also, this is a serious illness. It's an illness. right? And I don't think our laws, and I don't think that our policies really take into consideration the needs of this population, and that's nothing new to you. Yes, ma'am.
Steve, can we see how many more questions there are, so we know?
Because eventually we do have to bring this to an end.
Okay, so we.
How about those three and,
So we have a few more, so
okay,
if we can go.
well, we'll take you. How about that?
Protecting the trust money. Two things on that. If, say, the beneficiary dies early and there's still a nice amount of money in the trust, can SSI go and act?
No.
They can't.
No.
Where does that money go?
It goes wherever you say it goes.
And the same thing if, say, the beneficiary does something really stupid, a car accident kills 3 family members, can they sue the trust?
We're talking about estate planning trust. If the money is your money that went into the trust, then that trust money is protected,
Even though I'm dead.
even though you're dead, or we say your trust is mature. And that's important, because what a special needs trust really is, it's a form of a spendthrift trust where your child has no control, the trustee has absolute control. If you look at my video on doing the planning, we'll talk about the good and the bad of that. But part of it is that protection, right? Because those things do happen. Ma'am, you in the back? Yes.
Yeah, and I understand you to say that the attorney that puts together the special needs trust cannot also be the trustee.
Some can, we don't. Only for this reason. If my recommendation is that you use the Golden State Pool Trust, does it seem like it's a little self-serving? You know, here. Now, as time goes on, because I'm 67 years old, so I'm probably not going to outlive most of my beneficiaries. In fact, I know I'm not. So, you know, it will. We're in the process of changing over the trusteeship back to the nonprofit. The nonprofit is in charge, but currently I'm the trustee as we're building this. Here, that may change. But now there are attorneys who can serve as fiduciaries. Around here, I don't know any that do. Most of them have relationships with fiduciaries, and that's what's important. And I think any attorney worth their salt probably has 3 or 4 fiduciaries they work with, because in order to make the trust work, you have to have somebody who's going to be able to manage it. And I know we're running out of time. There are times when maybe family can be the trustee, but I'm just telling you, if that's what you're thinking about doing, think real hard about it, because the hardest ones we deal with are ones where family are trustee. We had another question here. Were you one of the 3 or? Oh,
Really quick,
quick
how
one.
hard is it, my son's special needs trust has a family member as an executor, how hard is it to switch it over? And then how, in order to use EBI, I know it's obvious, but I'm just not quite clear. You have to turn your S&T over to Golden Gate Pool
Golden
in
State.
order to use EBI, or can you do pay as you go, or?
That's a good question.
let's cover 2 things. This is not a Golden State Pool Trust program. We initiated it. We believe in it. We're going to be pushing it. This is not the last time you're going to hear from me. In fact, you could get sick of me eventually. But the reason we instituted this is we want to be able to serve people with mental health, but we cannot serve people with mental health unless we have folks who can actually deal directly with our beneficiaries. Otherwise, it's going to be a royal mess. But it's not just a Golden State Pool Trust program. She's already working with a number of other programs. There's a number of other pool trusts that are working at using it. It doesn't have to be. Currently, it's either a pool trust, a private fiduciary. So what's a private fiduciary? There's about 20 private fiduciaries in the area. These are licensed individuals here. So Herb Thomas has been doing a lot of work with EBI and all of that. Do you have to have special language in your trust? You don't necessarily have to. I've never seen a trust that doesn't say we can delegate some of the duties to an outside agency. Now, we have a formal language we're putting in documents, both in the individual trust and also with Golden State Pool Trust. Is it absolutely necessary? No. But once again, what we're doing with our clients, and a lot of the clients that are hiring us, they want to have that structure of a care manager or care management agency who's going to assess the needs and have the same things run like a business.
So Steve, just so it's clear for me,
Okay,
you cannot be an individual trustee and contract with EBI.
the rules right now is that there are no rules. My preference and the focus right now is working with professional trustees.
I hear your preference. but it's not-
No, and the question is, would EBI work with an individual?
We have one private paid family that we're working with, and we've been working with them for a couple years. They didn't come through the poll trust. They actually didn't qualify for regional center services years ago. They knew it, so they came to us several years ago, sort of tired of trying to constantly get the person in the
So
regional.
the answer
So they
is
came,
yes.
they came to us, and we came to an agreement that we would provide ILS services on a private pay basis. So again, it's
So the
assessed,
answer is
yeah, it is, but it's assessed individual by individual. We felt like we could actually help this person, so that's why we agreed to do it.
We're in the process of taking this, putting it to a test. You know, once again, in order to get the best result, my preference is professionals. I'm not in charge. You know, I have some authority. EBI is separate. So any of these programs that want to work with individuals, they're free to do it. As they do it, just thinking about the agencies, they need to get their process together because this has to be a win-win all the way around. I think we had one other question. Yes, ma'am.
You had a slide about background checks. Does that mean that you don't take people who have any kind of criminal?
Oh, no,
record?
we do.
So the question was, with the
Background
background checks, do they
check.
take people with a criminal background?
We asked if people want housing, then we asked if we could rent it first, but then we can sort of mitigate the risk factors that are gonna come up. Because if we're gonna work with a property manager that we've worked with like a long-term relationship with, we wanna give them a heads up. This is what's gonna come up. We've sort of connected the dots. You said someone was evicted recently. This is why they were evicted. It was due to a medical issue. They were hospitalized long-term and they couldn't return back to the house. That's why they lost their housing. We wanna be able to connect those dots for them. So yes, it does accept, it just sort of helps us mitigate and work out those factors prior while we're working for house. So yeah.
I know we have to bring this home here. Let me just mention a couple of things real quick and then let's go home. I know this is a lot to digest. Hopefully the video came out okay. With this, we have some other materials. I hope that you see the value. I mean, it still is a challenge, no matter what you do, okay? But I hope you see the value of this. There's two parts of this. Is while you're doing your planning, and I would really love it that if you're working with an attorney, we would like to work with that attorney too and show them how they could do a better job for their folks with disabilities, especially folks with mental health and behavioral health needs. The other part that I'm hoping to get out of my NAMI family here is I'm hoping you'll work with us, hoping us to develop this. We need your input on what we need. You know, there's going to be challenges ahead. Part of this, as we work on this, is our hope is to have this program robust, have it something that's really common. I will tell you it's made a huge difference. The other part of this is I think what's missing in the community, forget the trust, what's missing in the community are the kind of services that are provided as an entitlement to folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Why don't we have that for folks with mental health? We did, it's gone. You know, part of this as we do this because, and to really, this is bringing the services at a fee that folks take for granted. What we need are these services for folks with all folks with mental health needs, no matter what the cost is. By working with us and really looking at what is possible, maybe we can make that happen. Thank you very much.
How do we access that webinar that you talked about?